Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of My Golden Life. I'm Lisa Neller, your host, and today I have a very special guest. Her name is Angie Carlson, and we are going to talk about managing money as a team. I have been interested in interviewing women who are in the financial industry and who can help other women with their ideas about money and how they're managing it and all of that. But this is kind of unique because we're going to be talking about managing money as a team. So, with a significant other, with a spouse, that kind of thing. And Angie is going to give you a background, her own background, her story. We're going to start there. But Angie, I want to welcome you to My Golden Life and thank you so much for being my guest today.
Yes, thank you, Lisa, for inviting me to be on.
I'm excited to talk about this stuff. So let's just start with your story. Give us some background.
Sure. So I have been in the financial sector for over 20 years, and I have a very unique background. I started with processing back-end retirement, and then I did a season of taxes, which I will never do that again. That was awful. Then I went into federal financial aid and a student financial aid office. I was there for a decade, spent 7 years as the director, so FAFSA student loans, handled all of that from the administration point. And then during my time in financial aid, I had a near-death experience, which really caused me to look at the direction my life was going because as I was getting sicker and sicker, part of that was I couldn't eat or drink for 5.5 days. And your brain goes to some very dark places when you can't eat or drink and you have energy to do nothing. And as I was getting sicker and sicker, I needed a surgery to save my life. They told my husband at the time that he had 50-50 odds of being a single dad to our kids who were then in fourth grade and kindergarten. So we were pretty scared and thankfully had the surgery. It was exactly what I needed. We were fine. But at the end of the surgery, I was like thinking back on my experience and I was just laying there with all my regrets. It was like basically my deathbed got accelerated. And I had the one regret I had is, Angie, you could have been a financial coach and you were just too chicken to go for it. And so I was like, nope, I'm going to recover. We're going to go for it. And we're going to make this happen. So January 2021, I had already just got my certification, started my business called Carlson Financial Coaching, where I now help couples with their money conversations so that they can enjoy their wealth without experiencing the guilt. And so that is part of the managing the money as the team, just because of conversations we have in our head, we have with each other, things that we have been conditioned to believe. And my method, Agree and Achieve, is what I use to walk couples through the whole process, start to finish, because no one wants to build wealth just to have it and not enjoy it, or worse, they've been so disconnected from each other that the relationship pays the ultimate price.
Mm. Yeah, money is a big issue in relationships. And I will say that my husband and I don't even communicate very well about it. And we've been married 38 years. Now, thank God we have a lot of other things that we can talk about. And it hasn't really been an issue, but but it is sometimes really uncomfortable to talk about money. And probably because I don't know, maybe you can explain why is it that people struggle talking about money?
Well, yeah, I mean, this one's going to be, we're going to go some deep places here, but one of the things is, talking about money is like talking about your sex life. And that's not something we necessarily want to broadcast on social media, tell our friends about. And money comes with a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, especially from past experiences, whether, maybe we watched some things happen as a child, maybe we had a relationship that didn't go so well, maybe we made a bad decision. And obviously, we don't want to share things about ourselves that look terrible, especially when we've met this great person who may be the love of our life. We want them to see us in our best light possible and not share the other parts of us for fear of they may not like us, they may not want to be with us. And when we start keeping that stuff where it is and we're not communicating on it, and then all of a sudden our partner starts making decisions that we don't align with, but we've never told them that we don't align with it. We just somehow expect them to read our mind. All of a sudden there's tension in your relationship and both of you are just like, where'd it come from? And the money gets blamed because that's typically where people see it. But the money is really just showing, okay, what are we not working on?
What are we not working on?
Yeah. What have we not shared with each other? So like, I'll give an example of a conversation. This will help kind of land the ship here. So
Yeah.
let's say a couple is talking about budgeting. One really wants to do a budget and one doesn't. If they keep this conversation at the level of the budget, they're not going to get anywhere clearly because it's a 1-1 split. Underneath this, the wife does not want to do a budget because she saw growing up her dad would put everything in there that he wanted and mom and the kids got nothing. And so
Okay.
she sees the budget as very restrictive and a form of punishment, and she never wants to be punished again. Her husband, on the other hand, lived in a family that made 6 figures, but they went through evictions and foreclosures because they managed the money so poorly. And so he always said, I don't want to repeat that cycle. I'm always going to have a budget. When we get to this layer, I think it's pretty clear for any reasonable person to see why each person holds the belief that the budget isn't great and we're going to always have one. And this couple is reasonable. And once they hear that story, they'd be like, oh my gosh, that answer makes so much sense. That this is why we're struggling. But when the conversation stays at we're going to do it or we're not going to do it, we just butt heads all the time. And so really getting to some of those deeper levels allow our relationship to start going like this, because now we kind of get more to the reasons why we want to do something or we don't want to do something. And things start making sense for your partner when you start thinking that way.
Yeah. Here's what it's like to be me. I've heard this in, therapy talk. Like, let's learn what it's like to be me and where my thinking comes from. So what you're
Mhm.
saying is too, like how we grow up with money, how we have experienced it in the past is
Mhm.
going to have something to do with how we see it now and how we treat the subject, right?
Well, absolutely, because our brain wants to keep us safe. And we went
Hmm.
through an experience that was very real and for some people, very traumatizing. And so to just ignore that experience and say, yeah, let's do this over again is not something anyone is going to be remotely excited about. And that's what makes the money managing at a team more of a challenge because it's not that your spouse doesn't want to manage the money with you. It's that there's these differences that, you might hear something like bad with money and you have a physical reaction. And if your spouse would ask you why, you have no idea what the words would be to put to that. It's just a reaction. But
Yeah.
then your spouse is frustrated because they want to know why you're reacting to help you and you're not sure. And so there's just this frustration that can just build in these relationships, not through the fault of either person. They're doing the best they can, but because they're not seeing the results that they want. And so then there's sometimes questions of, do we make enough money? Do I have the right spouse? Can we really win? And then all those questions start having doubt that get planted in our brains. And that takes over because you're looking around seeing, like, yeah, I don't know if I can do this with what I have. And all of that is very natural, but it's also hard because you don't know how to break out of the cycle, which makes sense because you've never done it. So, of course, you don't know how. And that's where I come in and help couples with that with my method.
It sounds like you're a thinking partner, and I always like to say I'm a thinking partner too, but not in this specific area. But you can go down the rabbit hole with your thinking, and what you give attention to the way you tend to your thoughts is going to make a difference. Like I remember someone saying once that he used to have the thought of suicide, right?
Mm,
He had suicide ideation as a young person, and
mm,
eventually he got through that and realized at some point that that was just a thought. And when he was sharing that information with his wife, she goes, "Oh, I know what you're talking about." He goes, "You do?" And she said, "Yes, I've had thoughts like that too. Like I've had the divorce thought." And he thought it was
mhm,
kind of comical because he knew that she knew that it was just a
mhm.
thought and that you can have a thought and that it can if you start to really focus on it, then it could go badly. you know
Right. Well, and depending on that too, because once again, it's scarier to like change a thought than it is to actually do the work. And so
Mhm.
you're going to stay where you are with not wanting to change the thought because you're actually more comfortable that way because you've lived most of your life with the things that you've done up to this point. And so doing something new is very unknown. And of
Yeah.
course, every time we do something unknown, we ask ourselves a ton of questions, as we should. But that's part of what keeps us where we are too, because, if let's say you're a couple that you're in debt and you're like, I want to be debt free. Maybe you've never been a person who's been debt free. You don't know how to be that person, but yet that's the person you want to be. So how can we work on getting you two to see yourself as a couple who not only is debt free, but they love being debt free. They can handle the decisions that come to their way being debt free, because there's a fear of like, if I get out of debt, now all of a sudden I have to manage more money. Yeah, and that's naturally what happens when you get out of debt. But that fear of having more money can keep you in a cycle of debt because you know how to pay off a loan. That's a learned behavior. You know how to do it. It feels really good when you pay off a loan, but yet that's keeping you playing at a level that is not really your full potential because you're not elevating the skills to the next level of management. Maybe that's holding you back from saving for retirement. Maybe that's holding you back from paying off your home, taking that vacation, living that lifestyle you want because you're required to keep that job. And there's other things that you can do, but you get so comfortable that you'd rather stay with the comfort than grow into the next level, because what if you get it wrong? What if you can't do it? What if you have to face all these things going through your head that really are uncomfortable? And I can, so that's why I'm like, I can give you the best budget in the world, but if there's struggling to manage it as a team, if we're struggling with communication, we're having the conversations, like I said earlier, about the budget, it does not matter how good of a budget I give you. That's why with my clients, as we build a plan, the first thing is I need to know, what do you want your life to look like at the end of this?
Yeah.
What are the challenges to get your life to look this way? Let's pick some priorities to get there. At that point, we make a plan, because the plan needs to support where we're going. No one wants to do a budget to validate their paycheck to paycheck lifestyle. That sucks.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. So you're looking at more long-term life purpose, life aligning with your values, aligning what you want to do
Mhm,
as a lifestyle, how you want to live, and you
mhm,
start there and you get their picture of what they'd really like to have. And
mhm.
and I imagine, and tell me if I'm wrong, but like then do you help them establish some habits?
Yeah, so we definitely do habits establishment. What does this look like? What do we want this plan to look like? How do we navigate the unexpected? Because there's always going to be a car repair. Someone's going to go to the emergency room, but also the unexpected event could just be $20,000 shows up. So how do we navigate these unexpected things without it throwing a wrench into our plan or causing us to freeze and question the plan because now this variable changed that we didn't know about? That's is important too, because I've seen so many couples that they're working a plan, and as soon as they get something unexpected, they quit because they're so disappointed in themselves for not thinking of it. That's like putting a blueprint together for a house and being mad at yourself for not building the exact house you have on the blueprint. I don't know
Mm.
anyone who's ever done that, by the way. And so really showing people that it's not about, like, this is not about perfection. It's about, I mean, we obviously want to plan and get things that we know, but there's always things that come up. And part of the growth is, how are we the couple that can adapt to anything that comes our way?
Yeah. So give us a picture of what it might look like for a couple who could be ready for a financial coach such as yourself. What does their life currently look like?
Great question.
And
So what their life currently looks like is they've had some financial wins. They've paid off some debts. Maybe they're totally debt free. Maybe they've paid off their mortgage and they're 100% debt free. And they're just looking at their life and they're like, I want to get to my next stage. And maybe for debt, they want to get out of debt and start having an emergency fund. If they have an emergency, they want to pay off the house. If they paid off the house, a lot of times they're like, what's left to do? Because every time we go on Google, Google gives us this checklist and we've done it and we don't know how to write our own. We have 10 great options to pick from, and they're all going to be great. We know our life is going to be enriched by any one of them, but how do we get it right knowing the one or two that we really want to do for ourselves? How are we going to look back on this and not regret it? And so asking these questions are definitely questions that, if you're asking that as a couple, that is your sign that you are ready to work with me, because that's where all the belief and thought work that we talked about earlier in the podcast is really showing, because you're going to have this at every level of your journey. It's just going to show up in a different way, because the feelings you have about $1,000 mistake, you're going to have very different feelings if you think about $100,000 mistake. I promise you. And also looking at, okay, as your, retirement funds and stuff go up and down, how are you going to handle that? I mean, yes, you'll have a financial advisor who can help you with some of that too, but as a person, like, what decisions is that causing you to make day to day that maybe you wouldn't have made if you didn't have that information? That's what we can coach on too. What does your budget look like when you have thousands of dollars left over every month and you're not sure what to do with it? What does your budget look like when it's negative and you don't see a way out? All of those things I can help you with.
Hmm. I feel more concerned about the people who have a negative budget. If I'm going to be
Mhm,
honest, like the
mhm,
people, I can see where you can help both for sure,
mhm.
but also what you know, I'm concerned about the people who can't communicate. Can you give us, because that can start early on, right? That could start early
Yep.
on in a marriage or a partnership. And, uh, what can you do to help people communicate better?
Great question. So I have actually worked with clients in this exact scenario. One couple is coming to mind that they knew they needed me. They did not know where the money was going to come from to hire me. They ended up skipping a car payment to pay for their first session with me. And I was like, okay, we made the decision, we own it. And I asked them, well, why did you make this decision? And they said, because we decided this is the last time we ever want to feel this way. And I was like, that is like the best answer you could have ever given to this question, because their budget was negative. They were not communicating well. Their house was bursting at the seams. They just had a lot going on. Little kids, like there was a lot. And this couple working with me paid off $35,000 of debt less than 4 months later.
That's extraordinary,
Yes, and
I
how we
think.
created. Yeah, yeah. I mean, you couldn't make your car payment and you're averaging over $8,000 a month of debt payoff. That's
Wow.
incredible. And so how we did that is we looked at their styles of what did they both want in the budget? What were they going for? And we got clear on those priorities. Their priority, going right down my method, they wanted to be debt free. They didn't want to be paycheck to paycheck. They wanted to own their decisions. And one of the challenges was their budget was negative. Okay, so what do we look at to get the budget to balance? And some people say, I don't think there's anything there. That's why I've developed the concept of finding your hidden 10K. Where's the money hiding in plain sight that you don't see in your budget because we're not looking for it? It's maybe slipping through your fingers. Maybe it's located someplace else, because there is options for money to show up outside your paycheck. We looked at all of those and started to get those things working for them. Then we went and focused on the priority once again, back to getting the debt paid off was their priority. At this point, we sat down and made a plan. And when we made that plan, they were looking at it too, going, well, the plan's great, but we want it to be better. But now that they had hope that the plan would be better, they took that in to start navigating the unexpected. And part of it was they ended up adopting a child unexpectedly in the process.
Wow.
And yeah, and ended up
Bonus.
moving houses because they needed a bigger place. So those are two very big financial events that happen on top of what I just said in the beginning. But we walked them through that to be like, okay, this is part of your future. You know that adopting this child's the right thing. You know you need a bigger house to make this work for your sanity, your sleep, your education. Great. We need to do all that. And that's okay. And then as they did this, they were like, they saw changes that they could make that they were unwilling to make before. And the reason they were unwilling to make them is they thought they would never get it back. Why am I going to sacrifice something I want for something that's never going to happen? Once they could see it was possible and it was going to happen, they started making all types of changes. And then they ended up paying off $35,000 of debt in under 120 days with no extra income. And that's what it took on the mindset side. And even though they both wanted it, they just weren't sure how to do it. And the bigger part was they didn't trust themselves to make that decision because there was doubt. What if it's wrong? What if we regret it? And all these what ifs that came up that we had to really coach through to be like, okay, this is here and you have me here to help you through it. But my long-term goal is I am not helping you validate all your decisions. You are going to be a strong enough decision maker and so confident that you know exactly what decisions you need to make, regardless of what anyone else thinks.
Yes, and that I can see how that takes some coaching because I mean, just coming from a place of empowerment and a mindset is so important because it is what drives your actions, right? It's good, like thinking, gives you the feeling of confidence, and with the feeling of confidence, you can take the right action at the right time, I like to say. So,
Right. Well, and the hard thing in the financial world is you can take action and something unexpected can happen the next day. And then you're like, should I have taken the action? So part of the things I coach my clients on is when we make a decision, we need to own our decision regardless of what the outcome is, because we can have all the best information to make a decision and have a horrible outcome. And I liken this to a drive I did to Minneapolis. It's a 5 hour drive. We had to be to the airport, you know, to fly out. So I'm like 5 hour drive plus 2 hours there, 7 hours. I'm going to allow 8. Thank God I allowed that extra hour because we couldn't even get out of the county, which normally would take us 15 minutes. It took us an hour and a half to get out of the county because there were so many road closures and Google Maps kept sending us down a different road.
wow.
Now, I
Okay.
never drove to Minneapolis again because of the road construction. I did adjust and take a very different route back, so I was not repeating that experience, but it
Yeah.
wasn't, but I didn't quit the goal of ever driving to Minneapolis again. I just changed how I did it. And on the financial side, if we screw up, we just quit altogether
Mhm.
because the things that we've quote unquote failed on are the only things we know how to do. And so nothing comes to mind to try again. So we just stop.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah. Um, can you think of, is there anything you'd like to say about anything, your process, or, what people can expect when they work with you? Uh, Anything you want to add?
Yeah. So when I look at my process, don't think that you're coming to meet with me and we're just going to look at budgets and spreadsheets the whole time. I don't want to do that. That's like going to a 401k meeting. Absolutely not. Now, do we touch on that? Do we go over things like that? We absolutely do. But I've noticed as I've worked with my clients, when things start to shift, when we do the first 3 steps, they immediately know how to make their plan and they just do it. They don't wait for the coaching because we go so deep into figuring out where they want to go. And then they start seeing how they can get there. And then they start to see what changes do we want to make to get there. And they'll make changes and then either come to me if it's not enough to be like, hey, is there anything that we're missing? Can you help us? Or, hey, we actually found more money than what we thought we should. Great. I'm not opposed to you getting there faster, ever. But it's really a process so that you start trusting yourselves with your decision. Like my long-term goal is that you work with me for a season and you fire me. And you're firing me because you're doing so well on your own that you don't need me anymore. That is
Yeah.
great. I want you to do that. So this is not like a financial advisor relationship where you are going to have someone like me in your corner for life. You have me in your life for a season. We
Hmm.
get things in order. You go do it on your own. And then if you need to come back in 3 or 4 years because maybe now you're in debt and now you're debt free and you're now stuck again, I'm here to help you get through those seasons where you're stuck, to help you get to your next level, help you see that it's possible. And if you're craving that, if you're like, oh my gosh, this sounds like us, book a no cost call with me. You're not obligated to work with me. It's totally fine if you come to the call and tell me no. But let's at
Yeah.
least talk and get you unstuck and see where you need to go because staying in a life that you don't like, that's a decision too. And I know
Yeah.
deep down that's not the decision you want to keep making.
Yeah. So, well, thank you for that. And then, we'll just segue into the end of our show today. But, like, where can people find you? Tell us all of that.
Yeah, so I can be found on social media on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads under the handle at Finance Coach AC. My email address is Angie at carlsonfinancialcoaching.com, and the website is also carlsonfinancialcoaching.com.
Okay. Give me the handle again. It was at financial,
At Finance Coach AC. So F I
oh,
N A N
finance
C E
coach.
COACHAC.
AC.
Yep.
Okay. Great. So that will be in the show notes for sure. And I'm so grateful you came on to talk about this. So, ladies and any gentlemen who are listening, if you're out there and you're struggling financially and you're especially struggling to communicate with your significant other, then look up Angie because she can help you. She's going to help you get a handle on where you are with your finances, where you want to be in life, how to get out of debt if that's something that you need to do, And she's just going to help you feel better. And who doesn't want to feel better? I think so much of coaching, regardless of what niche we're in, is about feeling better at the end of the day. And sometimes that just requires a little support, right?
Absolutely. I would not be where I am without my coaches, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Angie, thank you so much for being my guest today. I really appreciate it. And we'll talk again, I hope, in the future. Maybe there's another episode that we could do together. But I really appreciate you. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lisa. It's great being here.
Yeah. All right. For listeners, thank you so much for listening. Until next time, I hope you have a wonderful week and have fun with your money. And we'll see you next time.